The Negev Desert, May 15th, 1948. On the last day of their lives, the British troops were breaking camp. For the past year, the soldiers had been living in an isolated region of the desert, one that appeared devoid of any visible life, making the men's daily patrols seem pointless. Their only contact with the outside world had been the monthly visits from the army supply trucks and a few brief encounters with the Bedouin tribes that passed through the area. Faced with the prospect of fighting and dying in a land far from home, time had taken its toll on the weary band of men who had idled away their days in monotonous anticipation of combat that had never come. But on this day the somber mood in camp had changed. The men were celebrating the news that their long tour of duty was finally coming to an end, and that soon they would all be home with their families in England. High overhead, the relentless thermal presence of the mid-morning sun reflected off the desert sand, creating a shimmering effect over the heated landscape, as a tall, thin sergeant drove his open jeep through the camp. Peering through the dusty orange haze, he spotted a group of tanned soldiers loading the last of their equipment into a line of waiting trucks. He pulled up beside them and stopped. "Let's keep moving, lads. The captain wants us out of here before noon." A shirtless private with sun-bleached hair grabbed an empty water container and turned toward the jeep with a grin. "Not to worry, Sergeant. Every minute we spend here is 1 minute less we'll have at the bar tonight." They all laughed as the sergeant threw the jeep into gear and continued on toward the last tent that remained standing. Gazing out across the desert, his blue eyes took in the blurred images of desolate gray mountains and saffron-colored cliffs surrounding their position, making him smile with the knowledge that, after today, these images would be nothing more than a distant memory. Sliding to a stop in a cloud of dust, the sergeant jumped from the jeep and ducked into the captain's tent. In the relative darkness, he saw the young blond captain sitting quietly on a folding wooden chair, his once cheerful face masked by a look of quiet resolution. He was holding a letter from his wife, a letter that he had read at least twice a day for the past month. Enclosed with the letter was a picture of a dark-haired woman holding an infant, a girl barely 6 months old. The child had never laid eyes on her father, but that would change, the captain had promised himself, as soon as they were out of this hellish place. "What time is it, Sergeant?" "It's almost 10 o'clock, sir. We're ready to move out." "Just throw everything in the back of my jeep. I'd like to be out of here before the sun gets any higher." Reaching into the pocket of his faded khaki shorts, the sergeant produced a handkerchief and ran it over his forehead and through his hair. "Yes, sir. Most of our gear is already loaded in the trucks. This is the last tent standing. These Arabs can have this bloody desert. I never want to see sand again unless it's at the beach." A rare smile brightened the captain's features as he tenderly folded the letter and placed it in the pocket of his sweat-stained shirt. "I have to admit, lying on the sand under the sun doesn't have quite the appeal it used to." Flicking a small brown scorpion from his boot, the sergeant motioned for 2 privates standing outside the tent to enter. The soldiers moved quickly, and within minutes the captain's home for the past 12 months was nothing more than a rumpled mound of canvas lying on the sand. The soldiers tossed it into the back of one of the large sand-colored military trucks, while a British flag flying from a makeshift pole in the center of camp was lowered for the last time, becoming the final thing to be packed away before the convoy set out for Jerusalem. Climbing into the jeep's passenger seat, the captain turned to make a final visual inspection of the deserted campsite. The men had done a good job. It appeared as though no one had ever been there. No one ever should have been. Satisfied that all was in order, he glanced back over his shoulder and motioned for the column of trucks and jeeps forming behind them to begin their final patrol out of the desert. Straining motors and grinding gears echoed off the jutting rock faces of the encircling mountains as the sergeants